Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Freely. So today may look like a very unique video because I'm not in my room today. I'm actually in San Diego, California. I've been here for about 2 weeks. Today is actually our last full day here in San Diego, and it's just been a really great time to just, I guess, disconnect. Not fully. I still had work over the 2 weeks I've been here. I've just been working remotely, but yeah, it's been really great being here in San Diego. If you guys don't know much about me, but I actually grew up in San Diego part of my life. I spent about 8 years here. Before that, I lived back in Hawaii, so it's been really great to be here in the place where I spent half of my life growing up. So yeah, it's really great to be back. Like I said, today's our last full day here in San Diego. I actually leave tomorrow morning, so I just thought it would be a great time to do a tutorial for you guys in just like this beautiful house area. This is an Airbnb we're staying at for only one night, but I really wish we could have came here sooner because just this whole setup here is beautiful. I'll be having B-roll shots of this property, but this is such a nice property. Yeah, it's just beautiful. They even have a pool right here. So today's video's topic is going to be how to shoot in manual video mode. So for those who are just beginning, you can have an option in video mode to either shoot in auto, where it just basically dials in all the settings for you, or you can shoot in manual video settings. So when I first got the camera, this was like a scary setting to be in because, you know, just so much things you have to worry about and change. And if you're coming from photography also, you might be familiar with manual like photos. This is similar to that, but in my opinion, I think shooting in manual video is a little bit more easier than shooting in manual in photography. Before I get into the tutorial, I just want to do a brief reason why you would shoot in manual. So the reason why I would shoot in manual video mode is because it gives you control over all the settings, and it's very important to understand all of these settings so you know exactly what each of them are doing. And if you're in a tight situation where it's very dark or very like bright, you know how to adjust those settings to make it exactly how you want it to be. And especially if you're shooting at certain frame rates like 24, 60, 120, it's pretty important to shoot in manual so you can be able to set your shutter speed correctly, put the right ISO, and put the right aperture that you're looking for. In short, this is gonna make you a better video maker in general, so it's very important that you just learn all how these settings work and how to use the manual video settings. So this property has a pool with a diving board. Maybe we'll jump in before we leave today. So to even get to the manual video setting mode, you're gonna want to turn the mode dial to the video setting. So yeah. First step, that's pretty easy. So on your screen, you're gonna see on the top left corner a button there. This has like a video, a symbol on it. You're just going to tap on that, and it's gonna give you two options: audio video settings and I forgot what I was gonna say, and manual video settings. Yeah, so you're gonna want to choose manual, obviously. So this is where you're gonna have to choose all these settings. The first one I always like starting with is going to be shutter speed, because that's super easy to determine. So depending on what frame rate you choose is gonna determine your shutter speed. And that's why it's so important to be in the manual video setting mode, because in the manual you can actually choose your shutter speed. So like I said, based on your frame rate is how you're going to choose your shutter speed. So if you're shooting in 24 frames per second like I am right now, you're gonna take that shutter speed and then basically double it to the nearest like round number or whatever your camera has. So for the M50 specifically, I have 24 frames per second, and you're gonna double that, and that's like 58, right? 48 frames per second. So you're gonna take that 48, and then on your shutter speed, you're going to adjust it to 1/50th or its closest equivalent. They don't have a 1/48, so 1/50 is going to be your shutter speed. And likewise for the 60 frames per second, you're gonna take 60, double that to 120, and then you're gonna put the closest shutter speed number to that, and so on for all the other different frame rates. So that's the first setting I set, because based on your frame rate, it's super easy to set up. So the next setting I like setting up is the aperture. So the aperture controls how much of a blurry background that you get in your shot, and along with the blurry background, it also adjusts how much light gets into the lens. So the lower the number is, the more light that's gonna come into your image, and the higher the number is, the less light is gonna come into your image. In addition to that, the lower the number is, the more blurry background you get, and the higher the number is, the less of a blurry background you're gonna get. So based on how you want your shot to be like, you want stuff to have blurry background, or you want your background and foreground to be equally sharp will determine which one you choose. So when I'm setting up stuff for like videos just like this, I just go for the lowest number. So the lowest I think I can go on here is like 3.5. It allows in the most light, and it also gives me the closest I could get for this lens for a blurry background. So for me, that's how I do it. Depending on what situation or whatever you want to do will determine which setting you set it to. The bottom line for that, the more lower the number is for the aperture, the more blurry background you get, but at the same time you have to worry about it being too bright or not being bright enough with the numbers. So the lower the number is, more blurry background, more light coming in, therefore more brighter, and the higher that number is, less light comes in, but there's less of a blurry background. So just remember that as you're setting this specific aperture setting. And the last setting that I set when I'm shooting in manual video is the ISO. And the ISO is basically the camera's sensitivity to light. So if you have the setting at like 6400 or anything beyond that, the camera is very sensitive to light. And likewise, that number is smaller, like ISO 100, it's less sensitive to that light. And in my opinion, this is the easiest setting to set up, because once you have the shutter speed locked in, which doesn't change, and once you have the aperture set in based on how much of a blurry background you want or how sharp you want your image, will determine what your ISO is. And for the most part, I set my ISO to ISO auto, because it'll just adjust everything around those two other settings that are already locked in. Yeah, ISO in my opinion is the most easiest one. That's why I set it last. But there's one last thing that you can adjust, and that's not in camera, and that's something you can buy, and that's called an ND filter. So I recently made a video about the ND filter, so definitely check it out if you haven't. An ND filter is basically a pair of sunglasses for your camera. It basically filters out the last remaining light that's hitting your lens so that you can have all your settings exactly how you want it. So if your shot is too bright after you have dialed in all your settings, which I'll show you guys in a little bit, the ND filter is where it will come in and filter out the last remaining amount of light, and you can get a really nice image. So I'm going to tell you guys my settings right now. My shutter speed is currently at 1/50th because it's double my frame rate, and I'm shooting in 24 frames a second. So you take that number, double it, and just get the closest number that you can get. Next is my aperture. So I'm currently at f5. I'm slightly zoomed in right now. I forget what focal length I'm at right now, and my ISO currently is at ISO 100. So this is the sharpest ISO that I can get. So the ND filter is doing its job correctly, but if I didn't have the ND filter, this is what the image would look like. So I'm just gonna screw it off right now. Just like this. So right now this is without the ND filter, and it's not too bad, but it is a little bit bright. I'm gonna demonstrate to you guys because this morning I was having a little trouble with the light, and I remembered, I was like, oh, I have an ND filter. This is what I buy this for. So yeah, I'm gonna show you guys right now. All my settings are dialed in 1/50 a second. Now I'm at f3.5, so I kind of want that blurry background, and I'm at ISO 100. So you would think, like, what do I do from here? This is where the ND filter would come in handy. Let's just get this on there. Okay, it didn't crack. All right, cool. Okay, now I'm gonna do this with two hands because I am super scared of cracking this thing. And there you go. So let's just adjust it slightly. There you go. Now let's change the ISO up, and then we're just gonna darken it. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so that's with the ND filter on. I have it at ISO 160 now, just to make my face a little bit brighter, but look at that. That looks a lot better compared to the previous shot that you just saw. Don't do what I just did there and drop your ND filter, because it's probably gonna break. But yeah, so this is the power of an ND filter. So once you have all your settings dialed in and you wanna keep your shutter speed, double your frame rate, the ND filter will basically be your ticket to having all the settings you need for your videos. So yeah, that's how you set up your camera for manual video shooting. And just note that once you know how to do it on the Canon M50 or whatever camera you're on, you know how to do it for pretty much every camera out there, because it's pretty much all the same thing. Now granted, the ISO might be a little bit different. You might need to go to a higher ISO on other cameras or a lower ISO on other cameras, but basically all you have to do is set your shutter speed to double your frame rate, so 24 to 50 or 60 to 120 or 125, whatever's closest. And then you're gonna set your aperture depending on what scene you're trying to shoot. If you want some blurry background, you're gonna put that aperture to the lowest it can get, so like 1.6 or 1.2 to get the most blurry background. And the ISO, for me, I just keep it on the lowest to get the highest quality possible. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but the higher the ISO goes, the more grain you're gonna see in your shots. And the lower the ISO is, the more high quality, or I guess the more sharp your photos are going to be. So that's why I prefer to have my ISO as low as possible. And when it's low light, you can't really help it. The ISO is gonna boost up to the highest it can get to. But yeah, in general, you want to keep your ISO the lowest it can go without being too bright or too dark. And then once you have all those settings dialed in and it's too bright still yet, you're gonna want to have an ND filter on hand, and this is where it's gonna come in very much in handy, because right now this is a great shot, and then this is what it was before. Not much of a difference. Maybe this is a really good shot. But yeah, that's basically how you shoot in manual video mode on the Canon M50, but also on all the other cameras out there. If you guys got some value from this video, definitely leave a like down below. It really helps out this channel, and share with a friend who might find this helpful also. If you guys want more videos about the Canon M50, I made a playlist called the Canon M50 User Guide. I have it in the card and the description below. It's really good because I just cover a whole bunch of topics about the Canon M50 and just video and photography all together. So definitely check it out. If you guys want to get an ND filter, I'll also leave a link down in the description. This is a really cool tool to have. The specific one I have is the variable ND filter. If you just get the regular ND filter, you're pretty much gonna have to change it every time you want less, or you want to have more stops of light being taken out. Definitely watch my ND filter video for more info about it. But yeah, I'll leave it in the description below if you guys want to check it out. With all that said, this is Freely coming at you from the beautiful San Diego, California. I hope you guys enjoyed the scenery, and I'll catch you all in the next video.